Zomaar, one. Ik ga een video laten zien van Professor Robin Walker. I'm gonna show a video of Professor Robin Walker in England. Hij is in Engeland. Hij is een Engelsman in ieder geval. Hij gaat de theories wat ik soms vertel van hoe mensen in een bepaald gebied, zoals in Brazilië. Ik zeg toch vaak van 100 miljoen Afrikanen wonen in Brazilië. Nou, en dat verandert steeds. Weet je, ze worden steeds meer mix en dat soort dingen. En over 50, 60 jaar zal het misschien een 10 miljoen zijn. Gewoon een guess. Just to say that. Ja, en die video is in Engels, dus die man praat Engels. Maar ik heb het vertaald naar Nederlands. Ik ga alleen een kleine pissie laten zien, weet je. Maar dan is het clear for some people so they can see how people change over time in a certain area. Just like in Brazil, because sometimes I would say there is 100 million Africans living in Brazil. But that's still changing every day, because every day not every day, but every year or maybe once in the 5 years they will send Portuguese people and Spanish people over there to mix with them, and so the population is changing, it's becoming more and more mixed. But anyways, I'm gonna show you a professor called Robin Walker, and he's gonna explain it what happened in North Africa. It's the same thing. But Brazil is the live moment at this point. You can see it live in Brazil happening in real time. Dus in Brazilië kan je dat real time niet zien, hoe het volk daar verandert steeds naar een mixvolk. Dus maar anyways, ik ga die PC laten zien om die video niet te lang te maken. Het is gewoon een quick video en let's see it. Waar heb ik die tory staan hier? Even kijken. Blauw.
Countries didn't exist on the vote.
Dit is hem.
Foodies,
Laat hem goed, even goed neerzetten, man. Ik laat het hier zo. So I'm gonna play it, and once in a while I will inject something or whatever. It's more a showcase of what he's gonna be saying. Het is meer wat hij zegt wat ik ga laten zien.
I'm curious, who has a copy of the Hidden Sites a Million? Just raise your hands. Oh, look at that. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So if you want to get it signed today, you can get it signed. And by the way, for the people who do have a copy, we do have the larger print copy today. Yeah? But people who come to the Hidden Sites Academy, the events, they learn a lot. So I'm hoping that you guys got your notepads and pens ready. Yeah? We do events, we do online courses, we do webinars and that sort of stuff. So check us out, thehiddensciencecademy.com. And I'm curious, just show of hands, who's never been to a Hidden Science Academy event before? Show of hands. Wow. Wow. For those of you who have never been to a Hidden Science Academy event before, tell them one thing. You gotta learn today. So without further ado, artist, black historian in the world right now, can we all make the greatest black historian in the world right now? Can we all make some noise and put our hands together for the one and only Robin Walker?
You mean white people?
Not just European people. So many people like to deal with this. Does anyone know what this is? It is Elephant and Castle. But what is the crest actually depicting?
I think it's East Indian. Is it the East Indian Company?
This is actually the Royal African Company. Some people call it the Guinea Company. And this is what there's a book on heraldry, and they have a section called Royal African Company. And can you see it says, supporters, 2 African blacks. Can we see that? And then underneath, we've got a certain motto in Latin. Anyone here speak Latin? Anybody? Regio, floret. I have no idea what any of that stuff says. All right, but this is important. We're going to come back to this, right? All right, so where did the action take place? Here we have a map of Africa, a map of Southern Europe. You've got the Mediterranean. You need to know where Egypt is. You need to know where Libya is. You need to know where Carthage is, where Numidia is, where Ceuta is, where Spain is, because all of these places are important in the story. Right, so you've all located those places? Okay, good. Now, the world in the year 500 AD to 1100 AD was quite an interesting place. The western part of the Roman Empire was in decline, and because the Roman Empire was the civilizing force in Western Europe entered the Dark Age. Things were going very badly indeed. And no doubt you've been taught about the Dark Ages, but let's be clear, the Dark Ages is one place in the world. Anyone know where?
En dus die Zwarte Piet figuur is ook dus een Moor. Een Moor en Moor before and people were called Negro, they were called an Ethiopian, Cushite. Now before, yeah, Cushite, Ethiopian. The Ethiopia you see now is the remnant of all that. So and it's just like Niger, it's from Neger. En hier in Dutch we will say neger, dus hier is het neger. En Spanjaarden hebben negro, negra en dat soort dingen. En dan heb je afro, is ook een van die namen. En Moor is gewoon, en gebruikte de Europeanen als betiteling van iemand met een afro. Ja, hè? Dus een Afrikaan, maakte niet uit waar ze iemand met een afro zagen, zeiden ze, oh kijk een Moor. Ja, de Moor heeft zijn werk gedaan, de Moor mag gaan. Dat is een oud gezegde hier in Nederland. Weet je? Dus maar Mooren zaten gewoon tot hier in Spanje, Frankrijk, om in plaatsen gewoon. Maar hij gaat je ook vertellen over dat soort dingen. Omenkels die naar slavernij zijn gebracht, zijn gewoon meegenomen vanuit Engeland en Portugal, Spanje. Ja, Afrikanen waren gewoon al hier in Europa, al lang way back. Yeah, let's hear it, man.
Europe. It doesn't mean the rest of the world was in a dark age. Does that make sense? And consequently, the appropriateness of the term needs to be discussed. Now, what exactly was going on? According to a European professor, his name is Robert Brifo, we read, from the 5th to the 10th century, Europe lay sunk in a night of barbarism, more awful and horrible than that of the primitive savage, for it was the decomposing body of what had been a great civilization. Cities had practically disappeared. They were pulled down and used as quarries to build towers in which a bishop or a baron established himself, who could afford some protection. In Nîmes, for example, the remains of the population dwelt in huts built among the ruins of the amphitheatre. Other towns were completely abandoned. Famines and plagues were chronic. There were 10 devastating famines and 13 plagues in the course of the 10th century alone. Cases of cannibalism were not uncommon. There were manhunts, not with a view to plunder, but for food. Are we understanding this? All right, now when I read that, the obvious question is...
And you're gonna see that many of the so-called and the first slaves who were brought in those times to North Africa came from Yugoslavia. Yeah? And Yugoslavia, so many from Eastern Europe. That's at least that's what he's gonna explain. Let's see it, man.
For real. So what do other European scholars say? Joseph McCabe wrote a...
But the main reason for me to show this video is because he will explain that they will arrive there and see black people there, and they will bring other black people also along and have them mix and say everybody was brought over there like slaves. That's why I'm showing you this, and he's gonna explain the same thing to you, because many times I've been saying, heel vaak zei ik die Tory toch van, er zijn blakke man, zwarte mensen zijn overal op aarde vanaf begin van tijd. Maar heel vaak, als deze mensen, dus Europeanen, ergens heen gingen, gingen ze hun eigen zwarte mensen meenemen naar dat gebied als werkers. Want zij zagen dat als werkers, als slaven. En dan laten ze kinderen maken met die lokale bevolking. En dan zeggen ze, iedereen was al lang een slaaf. Zo gebeurt dat vaak. En hij gaat hetzelfde uitleggen. Zo zijn er heel veel plekken mensen verteld van, jullie zijn allemaal slaven. Dat is helemaal niet zo. Een paar mensen zijn van hier meegenomen. Ze gaan naar bijvoorbeeld, toen ze naar Zuid-Afrika gingen, hebben ze Angolezen meegenomen. Ja, toen hebben ze van die Bantus meegenomen naar Zuid-Afrika, heel veel van hun. En dan zeggen ze tegen iedereen van, en Zulus, iedereen was slaaf en dat soort gedoe, maar dat is niet waar. Er waren lokale population and they will bring some of their own so-called slaves along and then have them mixed with the local population and then say everybody was already a slave from beginning of time and all those foolery. But it's not real. That's why I'm gonna showcase this, and this professor is gonna tell you the same thing. Ja, hè? Dus deze professor gaat je hetzelfde vertellen wat ik al lang ging papia. Daarom laat ik hem zien. Let's see it. Man.
Or the New Science and the Story of Evolution, where he says, none of our modern sophistry redeems the squalor of Europe from the 5th to the 11th century. By the year 1000, Europe was reduced to a condition which, if we were not Europeans, we should frankly call barbarism. Yet at that time, the Arabs had a splendid civilization in Spain, Sicily, Egypt, and Persia, and linked it on to those of India and China. Now, you'll notice that Joseph McCabe has called what happened in Spain Arab. Interesting. In other words, couldn't bring himself to go as far as he needed to go, but it's cool. All right, what about the civilization of the Moors? There's a Muslim chronicler, and we read, Cordova is the bride of Andalusia. To her belong all the beauty and all the ornaments that delight the eye or dazzle the sight. Her long line of sultans form her crown of glory. Her necklace is strung from the pearls. Her poets have gathered from the ocean of language. Her dress is of the banners of learning, well knit together by her men of science, and the masters of every art and industry are the hem of her garments. You've never heard a city described like that. And you can read about this in the story of the Moors in Spain. Okay, now, what are the details? The Muslim city of Cordova in Spain was much like a modern city by at least the year 950 AD. It had raised streets drained by sewers. It had raised pavements, it had street lamps, and it had a population of 1 million people. There were at least 200,000 properties and 60,000 mansions and palaces for the elite. The grander homes were 2 stories. They had latrines, running water, and the fine gardens surrounded the large buildings. There were 900 public baths and many private baths, 800 public schools and many colleges. Education was offered to girls as well as boys. This is an Islamic situation. We're understanding this. The El Zahra Palace, almost a city by itself, had 15,000 doors of brass and iron. By the way, I did actually visit that site. It is off the charts. If you get the opportunity, visit Spain, check out the Medinet El Zahra Palace. There were 4,000 markets where you could buy Chinese tea, Indian spices, Russian furs, African ebony and ivory, and locally made goods. I know people are thinking, Robin, you're exaggerating. We ready for this? We feeling that? Do you think we should go inside? All right, the building is called the Great Mosque of Cordova. The Spanish today call it La Mezquita. And if you then look up at one part of the ceiling, that's what's there.
Sferische delicatesse.
Not exactly jungle savagery, is it? All right, now about the presentation. We're going to deal with a few themes. Who are the Moors and what terms were used to describe the Muslims in Spain? I'm going to briefly talk.
En de Koran van die moslims zijn de eerste 5 boeken van Mozes, dus het Oude Testament. Ja, de Torah. En dat is 1400 jaar geleden herschreven door hun. Dus eigenlijk is de Bijbel, de Oude Testament en de Koran zijn eigenlijk hetzelfde, komen van dezelfde bron. Alleen anders geschreven een beetje, of whatever. Maar, want zij hebben ook hadith erbij geschreven en dat soort dingen, maar dat is... ja, daarom heb je in Suriname Mula Kondre. In Suriname you have a place called Mula Kondre. Of Mora Kondre, that many of these people they come from Mali area, and Mali used to be Ghana. Ancient Ghana used to be Mali, Timbuktu. After war came there, let me explain. He's going to explain the same thing. So let's hear it from this professor, man.
The conquest of Granada. I'm going to talk about the Umayyad dynasty, the Almoravid dynasty, the Almohad dynasty, and the Kingdom of Granada. So these are the themes that I want to get with in today's session, time permitting. All right, let's go. The peopling of North Africa is a complicated story. And it's complicated because North Africa is made up of multiple populations. Now, the very first people there were Africans. And they were descended from the people who created the Saharan rock paintings, and their descendants in North Africa are still there. They're called the Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. Then you had a second group of people joining the populations in North Africa, Europeans. There was a European invasion of Egypt, and this invasion was during the time of Ramses III, and these invaders were called the Sea Peoples, coming in from the sea. And they had a big impact, and their descendants are in North Africa today. Then there was the Roman occupation of North Africa in the 2nd century BC, and the Romans ruled North Africa right up until the Arab period. And
do you see how many times strangers came into Africa, into North Africa, where Morocco is now, and Mali, in those days? Zie je hoe vaak mensen binnen zijn gekomen, Turken kwamen daar, Romeinen zijn binnengevallen, en Iran, al die Perzië, toen heette Iran nog Perzië. Zelfs India zat onder Perzië. Ja, die Indiërs, die Hindoes zaten onder Perzië, wat je nu Iran en Irak gebied daar hebt, Babylon. Wat nu Irak heet, hoe heet het toen Babylon, wat als ze zeggen in Babylon, hebben ze het over hedendaagse Irak. Maar ja, let's hear it, man.
There was also the Vandal invasion. The Vandals are Germanics, the populations in North Africa, Europeans. There was a European multiple populations. Now, the very first people there were Africans, and they were descended from the people who created the Saharan rock paintings, and their descendants in North Africa are still there. They're called the Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. Then you had a second group of people joining the populations in North Africa, Europeans. There was a European invasion of Egypt, and this invasion was during the time of Ramses III, and these invaders were called the Sea Peoples, coming in from the sea. And they had a big impact, and their descendants are in North Africa today. Then there was the Roman occupation of North Africa in the 2nd century BC, and the Romans ruled North Africa right up until the Arab period. And there was also the Vandal invasion. The Vandals are Germanic speakers. Does that make sense? And that's a very, very important part of history. Scholars don't want to talk about it too much, but it's a very important part of history, trust me on that one. If I've got some time in Africa, are still there. They're called the Harad.
That's why here in the Netherlands you got a word called vandalisme. Zie je, de Vandalen zijn oude Duitsers van vroeger, van hoe lang was dit geleden? Nu broer, 1400, 1500 jaar geleden. Ja, hè? Dus als ze zeggen dat is vandalisme, nou dat komt dus van het woord vandalen. Die kills gingen dwars door alles breken. Yeah, just saying. Ja, hè? Let's hear it, man.
Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. Then you had a second group of people joining the populations in North Africa, Europeans. There was a European invasion of Egypt, and this invasion was during the time of Ramses III, and these invaders were called the Sea Peoples, coming in from the sea. And they had a big impact, and their descendants are in North Africa today. Then there was the Roman occupation of North Africa.
Zie je, de Romeinen zelfs kwamen daar.
In the 2nd century BC, and the Romans ruled North Africa right up until the Arab period. And there was also the Vandal invasion. The Vandals are Germanic.
En je ziet, die Romeinen komen voordat ze weg zijn. Die Afrikanen daar in Noord-Afrika krijgen niet eens rust. Arabieren plegen inval. So before even the Roman left, the Arabians came in, the Turkish people, because those Arabians are really mixed, Turkish people and black people, Africans mixed. That's why those people in Gaza. Let's hear it, man.
Does that make sense? And that's a very, very important part of history. Scholars don't want to talk about it too much, but it's a very important part of history, trust me on that one. If I've got some time, I might get into it a little bit later on in the presentation. Then, of course, there was the Arab conquest of North Africa. The reason why so many North Africans are called Arabs is because they're not indigenous to Africa. They come in from Arabia, they conquered their way. Does that make sense? And they conquered in the 7th century AD, and right now, 2022, they're still there, and they are the dominant population. Then you have Europeans, another group of Europeans entering North Africa as slaves. And these people entering North Africa as slaves came from the Slavic states. Slavic states, Eastern Europe. Does that make sense? One of the reasons why Eastern Europeans are to this very day called Slavs, and one of the reasons why Western Europeans have beef with Eastern Europeans. And as you know, that's what Brexit was all about. Right? Someone must have mentioned the war. All right, and then you had another group of people joining the population in North Africa, Africans, who were captured as slaves and brought there after the 16th century. Does that make sense? Now, the point is, do not confuse group 1 with group 5. Are we understanding this? And scholars do that, and why they do that is so they can present.
And this group 1 is the original African who was here in North Africa. And after that, after the Roman came, the Arabian came, they brought their own slaves and mixed with them and said everybody was a slave. That's how they conquered those places. Ja, that's what they did. They did that in dat hebben ze vele plaatsen gedaan. Ja, dus ze gaan daar naar Noord-Afrika in die tijd en Mali, Marokko woonden gewoon puurbloed Afrikanen. Maar toen kwamen die Romeinen, die Turken, ze gaan met die mensen mixen, maar ze nemen hun eigen slaven van andere plekken mee en die laten ze dan ook mixen met die lokale bevolking. En dan zeggen ze tegen iedere zwarte daarvan, jullie zijn allemaal slaven. Zo gebeurt dat. If you didn't know, now you know. Ja, just say, omdat die kills is, daarom zeg ik kills van, African is a phenotype. If you have an afro on your head and you're on the North Pole, they will say, oh, there is an African on the North Pole. How do you know that? He's got an afro. Oh, then you're correct. So that's how they see it here. Zo zien die mensen van hier, die Europeanen, dat. Ja, als je een afro hebt bij een Afrikaan, maakt niet uit of je op Zuidpool of Noordpool zit en nog nooit in Afrika was. Je bent een Afrikaan voor hun. Zo zien zij dat. Het is een phenotype. Een phenotype noemen ze dat hier. Let's see it, man.
All black North Africans as descended from slaves why Western Europeans have beef with Eastern Europeans. And as you know, that's what Brexit was all about. Right? Someone must have mentioned the war. All right, and then you had another group of people joining the population in North Africa, Africans, who were captured as slaves and brought there after the 16th century. Does that make sense? Now, the point is, do not confuse group 1 with group 5. Are we understanding this? And scholars do that, and why they do that is so they can present all black North Africans as descended from slaves.
You see what I meant? Zie je wat ik bedoelde? Dan krijg je dat van, ze zijn allemaal slaven, maar er woonden al zwarte mensen daar. Is net als hoe Columbus heeft Amerika ontdekt. That's what I mean. Like how Columbus discovered America, that's what I mean. There was a local population, but still they told you, and Columbus is the one who discovered it, because they don't count those people as being human being in those days. Maybe even not now. Just say. Ja, dus ze zagen die lokale bevolking, zag Columbus niet als mensen toen. Daarom kunnen ze zeggen, Columbus heeft Amerika ontdekt. Ja, voor waar die vandaan komt, voor de Europeanen. Ze zagen die Indianen en whomever daar was niet als mens in die tijd. Zelfs in Amerikaanse constitutie heb je nog steeds toch dat a black man is 3/5 of a man. Of zo staat in hun dingen. Ze zei nooit, daarom had je dus dat ze zeiden de Maroons are a wild people en runaway en chattel en dat soort dingen. Because that's how they perceive them. It's not because the name meant wild man of whatever. That's what they wrote down. Dat hebben ze gewoon neergeschreven. Dat zijn wilde mensen die ze zijn gestrand in het bos. Marooned. With the D at the end. N-E-D. M-A-R-O-O-N-E-D. Marooned. It means being stuck. Being stuck in the jungle. He's marooned on the beach. He's stuck on the beach. He's stuck in the jungle. Oh, he's marooned. That's one of the way they use it. Also. Maroon is also a color. kastanje, van kastanjebruin, rood. En in mijn cultuur zouden sommige mensen zeggen, hey Amanda, ready jong. Maar is maroon. Is dus bordeaux, precies bordeaux kleur. Is maroon color. Is net donkerder dan rood. Ja, dat is maroon color. Daarom werden en plus leven langs het water. Eén woord betekent niet maar één ding. Het is net als mitaki in mijn taal als ik zeg I waka. It could be somebody walking or I'm eating food and it's nice. You see? Zie je dat? Dat betekent dus twee dingen tegelijk, maar contextueel ga je begrijpen waar het over gaat. Daarom zeg ik, het is heel belangrijk om contextueel te kunnen denken en te redeneren. Dan kan je aan juiste facetten van dingen komen, anders ben je gewoon zomaar iets daaraan het doen in wilde weg. Vooral als je geen houvast hebt als cultuur, dan is het helemaal klaar. Dat gebeurt er met die Black Americans. Ze hebben geen dingen van ancient times zoals Maroons. I still know my God from the beginning of time. That's the difference. I know the God of my father from before time began. Yes, that's Maroon. Nigga, just saying, let's hear it.
Century, and then present the Europeans that conquered during the Sea Peoples period as the original North Africans. Do you get it? One of the reasons why Western Europeans have beef with Eastern Europeans. And as you know, that's what Brexit was all about. Right? And right now, 2022, they're still there and they are the dominant population. Then you have Europeans, another group of Europeans entering North Africa as slaves. And these people entering North Africa as slaves came from the Slavic states. Slavic states, Eastern Europe. Does that make sense? One of the reasons why Eastern Europeans are to this very day called Slavs, and one of the reasons why Western Europeans have beef with Eastern Europeans. And as you know, that's what Brexit was all about. Right? Someone must have mentioned the war. All right, and then you had another group of people joining the population in North Africa, Africans, who were captured as slaves and brought there after the 16th century. Does that make sense? Now, the point is, do not confuse group 1 with group 5. Are we understanding this? And scholars do that, and why they do that is so they can present all black North Africans as descended from slaves. In the 16th century, and then present the Europeans that conquered during the Sea Peoples period as the original North Africans. Do you get it?
You see the confusion? Dat is er dus in Suriname ook gebeurd. Als ze die Afrikanen brachten, waren al blakkamangs in het bos gelopen of ze waren al daar met die Indianen of whatever. Ze zeggen gewoon nee, die zijn ook slaven, die zijn weggelopen van die plantages. Terwijl heel veel van die kills waren gewoon daar in het bos met die Indianen al om en lang. En daarom krijg je dat effect dat die Black Americans er. We were already here. Yeah, but you're still an African. Even if you were there with the Indians or not. Your phenotype is African. Understand that. 30,000 years ago, only African were on the planet. Black one with curly hair. Yeah? Everybody stems from them. That's what your scientists say, not me saying that. Ja, niet ik zeg dat. Dat zegt de wetenschap. Zo van 30.000 jaar geleden was gewoon alleen krullenbollen nog op aarde. En vanuit die krullenbollen is de Grimaldi-familie gelopen naar Noord-Europa of Noord-Afrika in die tijd. Want nu ze hebben nu gesplitst. Noord-Afrika eigenlijk hier Nederland en dat hebben ze gemaakt tot Europa. Zoals Canada Noord-Amerika is, zo is Nederland gewoon Noord-Afrika. Zo was het voor die Afrikanen toen. 1400 jaar geleden, 2000 jaar geleden was gewoon hier Kilsblaad. Niks nieuws gebeurt er. Er is niks nieuws. Dit gebeurde al. Ja, mensen als ik waren al hier in Nederland gewoon tories aan het doen zoals ik nu aan het doen ben. Met tata mensen hier en al, mokro's en al, dat was er al. Er is niks nieuws. Yeah, they were deported just like Trump is deporting everybody. That's the same thing that happened with the Inquisition. Yeah, in the 14th century. Ja, you had to become Muslim or Christian. Een van die twee. Anders moest je de weg ruimen. That's why all the so-called heathen who was living in the small villages in Africa, they decided to take them out. Because many of them did not want to become what they now call Muslim. Because what they call Muslim now, my people know it as Asalema. You see the difference? So nobody brought Muslim thing to my people or Christianity. We already had that. It's just like Moses' name is Musa. If you go to my people in the jungle and say, do you know Moses? They will say no. If you say Tata Musa or Tata Musa, oh Tata Musa, say, oh yeah, then they will know. If you say, do you know the Christ? They will say no. If you say, do you know Kele Sekele? Oh yes, we know that. From beginning of time, not from slavery. Yeah, these things you think is new is not new. It's just like the European living in North America saying it's their country, while everybody know it's supposed to be the Aboriginals from Australia or the Amer Indian or whomever, one of those two. Yeah, from Asia, Asiatic black man and Indian and those people. That's why they say that those people came to America first. So whatever. Yeah, just saying. But this is how the population will change, and they will misuse that to say everybody was a slave. Even the local population that was already there. Because they will mix. They will have baby with each other. Yeah, and if one of those guys would run away from a plantation into the interior, into the jungle, they would say all those people in that area, just like Hamas and Israel. If Hamas go and hide at the school like they pretend or say they do, they go to a school to hide where children are or women are, Israel will say everybody there is Hamas. That's what's happening, and that's what happened with your slavery. The local population was mixed with the one who were brought there, and they said everybody was a slave. You see? That's what he's explaining in this video. This video, you can check it over there, the Hidden Science Academy. Yeah, this is the real talk, what most people maybe don't know. When I'm saying, no, I'm a female, they don't understand, they think I mean freed, taken from a slave or from a plantation and run away. No, female, there were free blacks. Just like I'm outside making video, other black people are in prison. They are on the plantation. Prison now is your plantation. Back then, it was called a plant is a factory. A plant is a factory, plantation. Yeah, the prison is a factory. They make goods. I was there also, I know. Yeah, they make bench, everything. Ze maken allerlei dingen in de gevangenis. Het is gewoon een bedrijf. Daarom kan het ook geprivatiseerd worden. En daarom moet het dus om een keer soms met quota opgepakt worden om het rendabel te houden. Ja, hè? Jouw gevangenis nu is jouw plantage van vroeger.
This is why the details matter. You can present all black North Africans as descended from slaves in the 16th century, and then present the Europeans that conquered during the Sea Peoples period as the original North Africans. Do you get it? This is why the details matter. Okay, now the original Moors, the oldest art in North Africa are the Saharan rock paintings. And the Saharan rock paintings, we feeling that image? And if you can Google them, you can see they're all Africans. And the descendants of that are the Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. And that's what a typical Haratin looks like, all right? But we mentioned the Sea Peoples, the Vandals, the Romans, and their descendants, and intermarriage took place between them and the original.
Just like in Brazil happening now. In Brazil you have Amer Indian, you have the Kano people, the Africans. You have the Africans there, you have Spaniards, you have Portuguese, and they all mixing. That's how you got North Africa today. Yeah, if you see somebody from North Africa today and they say, I'm Brazilian, you might believe it. Because they look the same. Practically. Ja, praktisch, een Marokkaan kan gewoon zeggen, ik ben Braziliaan. En mensen gaan zeggen, oh oké. Snap je? Omdat hetzelfde daar nu aan de hand is. Het gebeurt, wat ik nu zeg, gebeurt nu real time in Brazilië. Ja, die mensen zijn aan het mengen, mixen, dan krijg je een nieuw soort volk, mengelmoes. Let's see it, man.
Moors. Does that make sense? So you now have Moors.
Kijk maar naar de Somali's en die bekende Ethiopiërs. Maar in Ethiopisch bos wonen gewoon puur kankang Afrikanen, puur bloed. Maar die zie je nooit op tv. Je ziet toch die Habasha nu zeggen ze dat is een naam voor slaaf ook, Habisha. Maar zie je, dat is wat ik bedoel. Die kills maken die woorden tot iets anders omdat je bent een bezit op dat moment. They view you as a property, so they are allowed to name you. They will tell you what your name means and this and that and all those things. Dus gekken komen jou gewoon vertellen van, nee, jouw naam betekent dit, man. Nee, maar ik heet niet zo, jawel joh. We hebben geen tijd voor. Is net als my name is Njale. But because of the European, when my folks went to the city after slavery, those Europeans would say, we cannot say Njale. We will place Jales. You see? That's what happened. Many of my people after slavery, they went from the jungle to Paramaribo, to the city, and changed their name to Dutch name and all those things. Yeah. There's many places, heel veel plaatsen is dat zo. Zelfs op Curaçao, on Curaçao, the same thing happened. After they got free, many of them returned back to the plantation because they could not take care of themselves in those days. They had nothing because they were used to be on the plantation. They had to depend on the slave master. So they didn't know what to do. Ze wisten niet hoe ze zichzelf moesten onderhouden, dat soort dingen. En heel veel gingen dan terug. Al die dingen zijn er gebeurd, ja. Just saying.
Like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this image, and if you can Google them, you can see they're all Africans. And the descendants of that are the Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. And that's what a typical Haratin looks like, all right? But we mentioned the Sea Peoples, the Vandals, the Romans, and their descendants, and intermarriage took place between them and the original Moors. Does that make sense? So you now have Moors that look like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this woman is a part of Moorish history too, Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. And that's what a typical Haratin looks like, all right? But we mentioned the Sea Peoples, the Vandals, the Romans, and their descendants, and intermarriage took place between them and the original Moors. Does that make sense? So you now have Moors that look like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this woman is a part of Moorish.
You see? This is what happens. So ik ga het kleine PC en dan laat ik het daarbij, man.
Does that make sense? So what
I'm
usually
gonna play a small bit and then I'm gonna leave it at that. You can check this movie at the Hidden Science Academy. Daar bij die, is on YouTube. Is on YouTube, man. Dus je kan het kijken daar bij de Hidden Science Academy daar. Als je die hele story wil zien. Ik wou alleen laten zien dat dit is wat ik steeds tegen mensen zeg. Van nee. Er waren mensen, vaak en niet overal waren er misschien mensen, maar heel veel plekken waren al mensen. Maar ze brachten gewoon hun eigen mensen, zoals die Spanjaarden mixen gewoon met die Amer-Indian. En dan weet je toch niet wie, of een Spanjaard en Amer-Indian lijken dan bijna op hetzelfde, net als die verschillende groepen Afrikanen op elkaar lijken. Snap je? Maar voor die Afrikanen zelf zijn ze verschillende volken. Als je naar Afrika gaat, eentje gaat zeggen, ik ben Wolof, ik ben Kukiyu. Die andere is niet mij, ik ben Igbo, ik ben Yoruba. Snap je? Terwijl voor hun maatschappij is dat gewoon, dat betekent niet dat ze met elkaar moeten vechten. Het is gewoon een herkenningspunt voor hun. Als iemand zegt, ik ben Yoruba, dan weet je, oh, Shango is een van jouw goden, no? You see? Just saying. Ja, als iemand zegt, hey, ik ben Hindoe, dan weet je, oh, is Shiva een van jouw goden? Zie je? Maar als je dat niet hebt, gewoon, hey, ben je Surinamer? Ja, maar wat is God van de Surinamer? Kan niet, want Surinamer is een Chinees, Surinamer is een Javaan, Surinamer is een Saramakaner, snap je? Dat kan niet. Daarom zeg ik van, in een multiculturele maatschappij kan je geen God in het openbaar hebben. Het kan alleen lokaal in jouw tempel en thuis. Anders gaat jouw multiculturele maatschappij nooit lukken. Want die ene gaat het nooit accepteren dat jij met een kruis loopt en die andere mag niet met zijn keppeltje lopen. Gaat zeggen, nou als jij je kruis zet, zet ik ook mijn keppeltje. Krijg je dat weer als precies, net als die protestanten en katholieken in Ierland. Ja, hè? Daarom vroeger had ik een rapgroep, we heten Rara. Maar toen moest ik optreden met een, bevrijdingsdag op grote podium. Toen zeiden ze Rara, toen ze mij kwamen boeken. Dat was een oud groep van Duitsland of zo, van vroeger die om bommen gingen leggen. En toen zeiden ze, die naam kan je niet gebruiken. Rara, dat is een oude groep zo waarmee, ik wist dat niet eens. Want Rara voor mij was gewoon de vraag, omdat mijn muziek was altijd verrassend en verrassing. Van bobbeling tot kaseko, van alles kon ik elk moment gaan playen. Daarom hadden we die naam genomen. Ik was met een kabelkil en zo'n halfbloeds, maar die zong R&B en wij gingen rappen en dat soort story. Maar anyways man, you've seen it, I'm gonna play a small bit left en dan laat ik het hierbij man. Ja, als ik steeds die story zeg, dit is dus wat ik bedoel. Van, dit is heel vaak overal gebeurd.
Is black scholars say, well, the term more means black, so it's black history. No, she's in it as well. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So what are the terms that appear in the literature? You've got the term Moor, which is the European term meaning dark, which took place between them and the original Moors, the Haratin Berbers and the Chowchen Berbers. And that's what a typical Haratin looks like, all right? But we mentioned the Sea Peoples, the Vandals, the Romans and their descendants, and intermarriage took place between them and the original Moors. Does that make sense? So you now have Moors that look like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this woman is a part of Moorish history too. Does that make sense? So what usually happens is black scholars say, well, the term Moor means black, so it's black history. No, she's in it as well. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So what are the terms that appear in the literature? You've got the term Moor, which is the European term meaning dark or black.
Exactly with those Israelite stuff, the same thing happened there. In Canaan. Ja, hetzelfde is daar gebeurd. Die kills zijn daar met die Turken, die mensen van Gaza, zijn toch halfbloedjes. Een Arab is een halfbloed. Een Afrikaan mix met Turk. Althans, today the day. Let's keep it at that. Let's spelen nog kleine pissie, laat ik het hierbij, man.
That's the term Europeans use to describe the black look like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this woman is a part of Moorish history too. Does that make sense? So what usually happens is black scholars say, well, the term Moor means black, so it's black history. No, she's in it as well. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So what are the terms that appear in the literature? You've got the term Moor, which is the European term meaning dark or black. That's the term Europeans use to describe the black people in Spanish history. Then you've got the term Berber, and that's the term that Arab scholars use. It's a linguistic term, people speaking Berber. The origins of Berber, by the way, is in East Africa, in the Horn of Africa. You can link ancient Egyptian, you can link Berber, you can link Cushitic, which is Somali, you can link Hausa or Chadic, They all go back to one parent, which is in the Horn of Africa. That automatically tells you that the very first Berber speakers were sub-Saharan Africans.
Ja, zie je? Plus in die tijd, hij zegt jou toch, Kushi was eerst Somalië gebied daar. Maar die naam kreeg ook iedereen. Man, those are the Kushites. Even if you were from the North Pole. Man, a Kushite is on the North Pole. Because it was the name for black people in those days. Yeah, a Negro is on the South Pole. Oh yeah, how do you know? He's got an afro. Oh yeah, it's a Negro. Simple. I'm gonna leave it at that later, man.